Weighed down, on the move with everything they have and everyone they have left. Here at the crossing between Darfur and Chad, more than 1,000 pass through every day. Their fathers and brothers were forced to flee months ago, escaping the massacres of the Rapid Support Forces paramilitary group, which rampaged through western Darfur, beating back the Sudanese army. With escape comes relief, but there's no escaping the memories of what they have seen. Crossing into Chad, the displaced disappear into the dust. Journalists haven't been allowed to cross and film on the other side. Until now. Rare access into West Darfur has been granted by the RSF, now in charge. The only traffic we see on the route in, horse-drawn carts carrying drums of fuel. A vital source of income for the RSF in their fight to control Sudan. This is El-Genina, Arabic for the garden, but here, barren service stations looted long ago sit across from the street stalls running the show now, one bottle at a time. The international airport was a symbol of the rebirth of war-torn Darfur. After the horrors of the early 2000s, now the fans were only in the wind. Beside trenches where the electrical cables were dug up and stolen. Airport security means something very different here.
المطار حقنا وتحت إشرافنا وحميتنا احنا الحامين المطار هسه حاليا كويس. انا قايد المطار الحامل المطار يهيد المدافع الفلول ديل خلي تاني طيرانهم يجي بهنا سماء الجنينة محروسة إن شاء الله.
But there are no planes or even people to protect. A year ago, the RSF and its Arab allies, at war with the Sudan armed forces, took control of the airport and laid waste to this city and the Masalit people who lived here. Bodies were piled high in these streets. Overwhelmed survivors stopped counting, but the dead may number as high as 15,000, with hundreds of thousands forced to flee. Abu Adam Yahya is haunted by a massacre at the school next door to his house.
شفت بعيني كده زي 200 نفر 200 نفر ده كله رجال 2 أطفال كمان صغار.
He doesn't remember the date. Soon after Ramadan last May is the best he can guess.
يا أعوذ بالله أعوذ بالله أعوذ بالله الله لا يجيب لنا شيء زي ده تاني خالص. نتمنى من عند الله يا رب.
In the market, there's an uneasy normality. It is hunger that now stalks those who stayed. The little food available here is far too expensive for most. More than a year of fighting means crops have gone unplanted, food is scarce, and the Sudanese army is blocking aid, using it as a weapon of war. Famine looms large.
دايرين لنا مويه، دايرين لنا مدرسه، دايرين لنا تعليم، ودايرين الامان. كرهنا الا المشاكل في السودان. وضع لسه في السودان نحن أبينا شديد، ويقول موقع نحن ناس مواطنين أدرياء ودايرين الاستقرار.
This is not the reality the RSF presents when they take us on a tour of the city. They're keen to show their rebranded, new, secure El-Genina and to reframe the atrocities committed here.
تاسي براك جولتي في الشوارع كلها وشفت المواطن آمن، ما في أي حاجة بتخلي المواطن يعني يتزعزع ولا ينزح ولا هناك. نحن ندعو قوات دعم سريع من جميع المواطنين بدون فرز أو بمختلف مسمياتهم يعودوا لبلادهم يعني، وأي زول يعود لبيته في وطنه.
But there is no tour of the mass graves which survivors and satellite imagery tell us exist. No talk of the crimes against humanity the RSF are accused of committing. No mention of the ethnic cleansing that echoes the atrocities of the Darfur genocide 2 decades ago. And any questions about it are met with denial.
وطبعا الناس بتتكلم بيقولوا يعني الدعم السريع عمل انتهاكات للمواطنين وكذا وهناك، لكن ده كله كلام مزيف، كلام ما صح، ما عنده علاقه بالصح ولا نهي. الدعم السريع اول حاجه قوات قوميه فيها كل السودانيين من رحم الشعب السوداني، تنتهك يعني المواطنين كيف؟ ما في كلام زي ده كله كلام ما عنده علاقه بالصح.
Last stop is the El-Genina teaching hospital. It was partially destroyed and looted during the fighting. Now it's operational again. The RSF want to show off how well they are cooperating with the international aid agencies here.
اسم الأطفال هسه جسم شغال بصورة ممتازة، شغال بفول كاباسيتي.
But of the 160 medical staff who worked here before the war, just 30 remain. The only working hospital in West Darfur. They are struggling to cope with the burgeoning number of malnourished children being admitted.
You only see these in emergencies, you know. This is bilateral pitting edema, you know. And this is only in acute food insecurity situations.
When they arrive, they have a severe levels of malnutrition, you know, coupled with the infections that will have been treated earlier. And so it becomes very, very difficult to try and rehabilitate and to feed and to treat them.
For those who make the long journey to get here, the lack of resources mean that some cannot be saved. Women stand powerless over their premature babies, knowing there's nothing they can do to keep them alive.
أكسجين ما في عيال بيموتوا. هسه الجمعة اللي فاتت 5 جنة من زمن الظهر لحد المغرب بس 5 جنة يتوفى.
And as in all wars, it is the eldest as well as the youngest who are most vulnerable.
ناس كبار عندهم أولادهم ماتوا حالهم بالبلد تعبانين جعانين وحفيانين.
So more and more leave with each passing day, seeking food, medicine, safety, in search of a new home. The RSF may be in control of this place, but it is powerless to stop the people abandoning a city that's no longer theirs.
And a dubbed version of that report will be available soon on our website. Well, I'm joined now by the US Special Envoy for Sudan, Tom Perriello. Thank you very much for joining us. Can you tell me, what are you trying to achieve in Sudan right now? What is your immediate aim?
End the war, get food and medicine to people who need it, and help with a democratic transition to civilian rule. But we must end these horrific atrocities. We must be able to get food and medicine into these situations that your footage covers, and it must happen immediately.
What leverage and influence does the United States have?
Oh, the United States is working with many African counterparts, Europeans, Gulf allies. We are trying to make clear that international humanitarian law must be respected. We need the Army, the SAF to be allowing food and medicine across the border. We need the RSF to guarantee that they will not attack, loot, or kill humanitarian workers as this is delivered. And time is not on our side, not only because of the horrific fragility you just showed, but because the rainy season is on the way. And that is only going to make delivery of these life-saving materials even more difficult.
As you know, the RSF is supported by the UAE. What have you been saying to them?
Our message to all of the countries in the region, including the UAE, is that this is a time to be partners in peace. This is not only a situation that is putting millions of Sudanese people at risk, it's become a threat to stability across the region and a country that is geographically expansive, strategically located, incredibly diverse. So first and foremost, in honor of the Sudanese people, we must put pressure on both sides to silence the guns, come to the peace talks and end this war and ensure that humanitarian access. And I think the Sudanese people will have a very long memory of those who stood with them and with peace and those who helped fuel this war.
Do you think they're listening? You know, there is not a clamor from around the world on Sudan, is there?
Sadly, we see way too much silence. The Sudanese people talk to me about being rendered invisible even at their worst hour. But I do think the world is starting to wake up. I think we're seeing more allies in Africa and in the Gulf understand that this is a crisis of not only tremendous humanitarian importance, but also regional importance. And that's why we need the talks to restart in Jeddah. We need the army to commit to those talks, as well as the RSF, which has done so. We need to ensure that humanitarian access now. But yes, we need the world to pay more attention to this. We appreciate the footage you were able to get and show the world.
I mean, you know, you are the United States envoy, but we're seeing tonight, you know, President Biden is very, very engaged on the Middle East and on Israel. And obviously that's understandable, given the United States relationship with Israel. But, you know, these two conflicts are very comparable. You know, the numbers of people killed in Sudan is horrific. The number of people at risk of starvation and humanitarian disaster is much greater than it is in Gaza. You know, how easy is it for you to engage the White House, the president himself, on this issue? You know, does he ever make the calls himself?
We've actually had great support from President Biden, from Secretary Blinken, but we need more countries around the world to join us in pushing for this. But it is really difficult to communicate the sheer scale of this crisis. We're talking about tens of millions of Sudanese who've been displaced from their homes. We're talking about hundreds of thousands that are facing famine or famine-like conditions. This is just a massive country, and we are just not seeing the attention we need and that the Sudanese people deserve. We were able, with the Paris conference in April and our supplemental, to significantly increase the amount of aid going to that area. But we need far more, and we need far more pressure on the parties to end this war. So we have leaned in as the United States. We believe that it's very clear neither side has a path to military victory. The victory must come for the Sudanese people through negotiations and handing the future over to the Sudanese people. And we need to see the region and more of the world care and support those efforts.
Tom Perriello, thank you very much indeed for joining us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.